It all began during a parliamentary session in the United Kingdom when MP Sarah Pinn, a representative of the Reform Party, made a statement that quickly sparked a wave of controversy. She proposed implementing a ban on the wearing of the burqa in public spaces, arguing that it was a necessary measure for national security reasons. In her argument, she pointed out that several European countries, such as France, Belgium, and Denmark, had already adopted similar policies, which she saw as a model to follow. The reaction in the chamber was swift. Although the Prime Minister acknowledged Sarah's presence in her new parliamentary bench, he avoided engaging directly with the issue. Instead of responding to the proposal, he diverted the conversation toward criticizing her party's economic plan, calling it unsustainable and comparing it to past mistakes, such as those made during Liz Truss's brief tenure. But the controversy didn't end there. Sarah Pinn's statements were addressed the following day on a television program featuring Fahima Mohammed, who appeared visibly upset and did not hesitate to share her perspective. From her point of view, the MP was ignoring pressing issues such as the rise in violence against women, mental health problems in female prisons, and other urgent social matters. According to Fahima, the Reform Party was replicating radical ultranationalist positions from Europe, disguised under the rhetoric of public safety. In her view, wearing the burqa does not pose a threat, but rather represents a legitimate expression of religious freedom, protected under British law. She also criticized the attempt to restrict that expression, while other religious figures, such as bishops, still enjoy visible privileges within state institutions. During the live broadcast, Fahima raised the intensity of the debate by pointing out an apparent contradiction in Western discourse. According to her, while countries like Iran are criticized for imposing the veil as a form of oppression against women, the UK was proposing the opposite, punishing those who choose to wear it voluntarily. This double standard, she argued, reflects a cultural and political inconsistency that ends up stigmatizing Muslim women, placing them at the center of ideological battles without considering their individual autonomy. She also questioned the fact that a female MP, given a rare opportunity to address important issues in Parliament, chose to focus on what she considered a minor matter. Fahima emphasized that urgent issues such as gender-based violence, overcrowding in women's prisons, or access to mental health services deserve higher priority. Instead, according to her, Sarah Pinn was echoing the narratives of European nationalism, aligning herself with policies from countries where the far right has gained ground by banning the burqa under the guise of public order or national identity. When the program host asked her whether she considered those European nations to be extremists, Fahima did not hesitate to say yes. She listed France, Belgium, Denmark, Austria, and others as examples of governments or political movements that are not secular, with clearly exclusionary tendencies. She argued that many legal decisions in those jurisdictions are driven by ideologies closer to intolerance than to state neutrality. In her view, the UK should not follow that path, as it has a legal tradition that protects freedom of worship and religious pluralism. In one of her most passionate points, she stated that if there is room in Parliament for religious figures like bishops sitting in the House of Lords, then it should not be shocking to see a woman in a niqab shopping at a supermarket or walking down the street. She argued that the real threat does not come from these women, but from the distorted perceptions promoted by certain political sectors which attempt to associate Islamic dress with terrorism without any basis. From her perspective, proposals like Sarah Pinn's not only fuel Islamophobia, but also set a dangerous precedent in a country that should be defending the right to personal, religious, and cultural expression for all its citizens, regardless of how they look or what faith they follow. Following Fahima Mohammed's appearance on the program, the host, visibly irritated, took the floor with a mix of irony and disapproval. His stance was clear from the start. What Fahima had done, in his view, was nothing more than emotional exaggeration and a distortion of the real debate. Far from acknowledging the validity of her arguments, the host completely dismissed her, labeling her as misinformed and more interested in creating a moment of public outrage than in seriously addressing the points raised by Sarah Pinn. From his perspective, the core of the MP's proposal had been deliberately misinterpreted. He insisted that at no point had Islamic faith been attacked or religion framed as a problem. What Sarah had brought to the table, he argued, was purely a matter of public safety. The wearing of a garment that completely covers the face, leaving only the eyes visible, could pose a challenge in contexts where visual identification is essential. This wasn't about headscarves, hijabs, or cultural symbols, he said, but specifically about the full face veil, commonly known as the burqa. The host emphasized that such questions are legitimate in any democracy, and that curbing debate for fear of offending certain sectors was, in his opinion, a form of censorship disguised as inclusion. To him, the issue wasn't religion or personal customs, but the possibility that someone could use such attire to conceal their identity for illicit purposes, something that he claimed cannot be ignored in times when security threats are real and tangible. In the same tone, he launched a direct attack on what he called the left's victimhood narrative, arguing that whenever an uncomfortable or politically incorrect topic is raised, certain progressive voices default to shouting racism or discrimination instead of responding with reasoned arguments. In his view, this victimization tactic not only weakens public discourse, but also distorts the true fight against racism and intolerance, turning it into a tool for political manipulation. Throughout his monologue, the host firmly defended Sarah Pin's intervention, stressing that it was a valid question posed within a legitimate institutional setting. For him, the dramatic reaction from public figures like Fahima only proved one thing, that they were unwilling to tolerate any challenge to their views without resorting to moral outrage or personal attacks. In an attempt to close the segment with a note of authority, the host mocked what he saw as the progressive audience's inability to distinguish between criticism of clothing and an attack on religious identity. He concluded by reiterating that in an open democracy, no ideology, belief, or tradition is above debate, and that all topics, no matter how sensitive, must be open to discussion without the fear of being labeled intolerant simply for asking an uncomfortable question. The host also made it clear that, in his opinion, allowing certain ideological groups to dominate public discourse through political correctness not only weakens debate, but also creates a climate of cultural intimidation. If you can't ask a question without being called a racist, then what kind of democracy are we building? He asked sarcastically. For him, attempts to shield certain topics under the guise of cultural respect end up acting as a gag on dissent, especially when it comes to immigration, integration, or security policies. The host also criticized the tendency of some sectors to use religious identity as a shield against any form of questioning, pointing out that not every observation about cultural practices should automatically be seen as a personal attack. He argued that this binary logic, where any doubt is labeled as phobia or discrimination, undermines genuine efforts at coexistence. From his perspective, defending open debate also means protecting religious communities from being politically weaponized by those who claim to represent them. He also emphasized that public figures like Fahima Muhammad, who present themselves as political analysts, bear a greater responsibility when communicating, and cannot rely solely on emotion or victimhood as their only response. In his view, an opportunity was missed to have a mature conversation about a sensitive topic, replacing thoughtful analysis with an impulsive reaction seemingly designed more to provoke outrage than to seek real solutions. One thing is defending religious freedom, he said, and quite another is shutting down any discussion under the threat of being accused of hate. And if you also believe that debate should not be silenced, that difficult topics must be addressed head-on and with freedom of thought, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your opinion in the comments. Here, we don't censor critical thinking. See you in the next episode.